Hi, my name is Jon Dalton, and I'm here today to talk to you about the 2-5-1. Now, the 2-5-1 is a very common chord sequence, a gift to composers. You'll find it in a great many jazz standards, and also it's popular in other musical forms like soul, R&B, that kind of thing. Probably even in classical music, you know, where it's one of those things where you start to look for it, you'll find it. The 2-5-1 is built on the second, fifth, and first measures of a given scale. In this case, we're talking about a major 2-5-1. I'm going to work in the key of C major because that works for a lot of instruments. In the key of C major, a 2-5-1 would be represented by the 2 chord being a D minor. The 5 chord is going to be a G chord. In this case, I'm going to use a G dominant 7th. And the 1 chord is going to be something like a straight C major in this instance. Now, most jazz musicians probably won't be playing pretty plain vanilla chords like this. They'll probably be substituting, and substituting just means changing the chord for something that sounds similar or that, you know, will harmonize or marry with it in some way. So you might find the use of, say, a D minor 7th, or say a D minor 6th, or even a D minor 9th is a nice variation of that. And, you know, we'll talk about some variations on the 5 chord in a minute, but you might find the use of, say, a C major 7th. And the thing is, from an improviser's point of view, what we want to do is we want to find ways of playing around those notes. Now, the first example that I'm going to show you is pretty much a standard 2-5-1. I'm not going to use any notes that don't feature in the major scale. So here we go. I'll give you that again. Now, that's the kind of thing, I'm really giving you that for demonstration purposes. It's probably not the kind of line or phrase that I would actually play, but it's useful to know where the basics are, because I'm probably always thinking of that as an underlying feature of what I'm going to play. How can I make that clearer for you? Well, for example, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a substitution for the 5 chord. I'm going to change it from a straight G dominant 7th chord to a chord that's quite popular in jazz and other forms of music. This is a 7th chord with a sharpened 9. This is the sharpened 9 here. This is a chord that's used quite a lot in jazz. It's also used in some forms of rock music. You've probably heard it in this kind of context. It's got a nice racy kind of a sound, that sharpened 9 chord. The reason it has that kind of dissonance is because it features both a major third and a minor third an octave above it. Sound quite strange when you play them like that in isolation, but when you play them with a chord you get this kind of a sound. So there you go, that's a 7th chord with a sharpened 9. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick out a phrase that pulls out the sharpened 9, and bear in mind that the sharp 9 doesn't feature in the C major scale, so this is how it's going to sound. So just imagine that over the 2-5-1. It's going to sound like this. Just once more here. Slightly different. Doesn't matter, we're just playing examples here. So that was using the sharpened 9. Now, as I'm looking at this chord, this G7 sharp 9. I'm looking at three notes in it, which are the 3rd, the 7th, and that sharp 9 here. And I'm seeing that they also belong to another chord, which is this D flat chord here. It's a dominant chord. I think most guitarists would refer to that as a D flat 13. Now, whether or not it's a full 13th in the sense that a keyboard player might want to refer to that, well, that's open to question, but it certainly would harmonize with a full 13th. You could make it more 13th-like by maybe adding the 9th on top. But here's the point. Here's those nice notes here. As I say, I pulled them out of that 5th bass chord, the G7 sharp 9. So what would happen if we tried to introduce that D flat 13 or D flat 7 bass chord as a substitution and actually played notes that would be featured in those chords? Well, you get a sound something like this. I'm going to give you that again. So really what you're doing is you're kind of turning this into this. I guess pretty obvious as a substitution when you hear it in that context. And again, another feature, again, I'm just looking at these three notes here. These are opening lots of melodic doorways for me. I'm also seeing those notes as the minor 3rd, 6th and 9th of, I don't know what you'd call this, maybe an A flat minor 13. It's a nice chord, I like that one. So maybe we could pull out a run that moves from the D minor 7 to the A flat minor 13 to the C major, in this case a C major 9th. Let's try this one. I'll do that again. So that was using the A flat minor chord as a substitution for the G dominant chord. And here's another variation. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to build a run that is based on this kind of a change where you go from the 2 chord. I'm going to go to that A flat minor chord, but I'm also going to modulate to the D flat 7 chord and then back to the 1 chord. So this is what you have. And let's try and build some kind of a run on that. Let's try this one. I'll do that one more time. So there you go, that's a very nice variation there on the standard 2-5-1. Just one other variation while we're at this end of the fretboard before we move on. I've neglected to mention perhaps that another great substitution for this 5 chord here, the 7th chord, maybe instead of just using the sharp 9, we could also use the flat 9. Flat 9's got a very romantic sound. It always reminds me of kind of like gypsy music, I guess. So in that case, your 2-5-1's going to sound like this. variation, I'm going to actually introduce both the flat 9 and the sharp 9. So we get a run like this. So I'll start again. And once more. So it kind of has a kind of a slightly gypsy feel to it. So moving on, now just one more example that occurs to me. We've worked with this this A flat minor to the D flat 7 chord. We've worked very much kind of in a box in this area of the fretboard, but what I'm going to do is just open up the fretboard a little bit here and show you another example of how to do that in a more linear fashion down the neck of the guitar. So we've got something like this. And one more. Okay, so while we're down at this end of the fretboard, let's look at some other ways that we can use this 2-5-1. This is a 2-5-1 that I'm going to base this on a D minor 9. That's going to be my 2 chord. To G7. In this case, I'm going to actually sharpen the 5th to make this a G7 plus. And then we're going to land on C major 9th. But what I'm going to do, instead of just literally playing the D to the G plus, I'm just going to build my first part of the run on an augmented, a plus type of example. And it's going to go like this. Just once more here. And while we're on the subject of the plus chord, you might want to know that there's a scale and it's known as the altered scale. I'll play that for you one more time. So you could maybe build some kind of a line using the altered scale. The altered scale. And just one more example, again going back to this the 2-5-1 I showed you earlier, using the D to the A flat to the D flat to the C, but down at this end of the fretboard, this is a nice one. So there you go, there's some examples in the land of 2-5-1s, not exhaustive by any degree. There's just a few things that you can maybe use as springboards for your own discoveries. There are possibly thousands of other variations on this, and I just hope that this will get you thinking in new ways and that you'll invent some musical discoveries of your own, and I'd very much like to hear them when you do. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for listening.